Welcome, golf fans, pursuers of knowledge in the almighty dollar. This is your golf guru bringing you the 2023 Valero Texas Open. This is my preview show with an eye on the betting side. I'm going to get you all the inside scoop on where you might want to look to bet and also to get you thinking about your DFS players and lineups. I've got a giveaway for the Masters I'm going to talk about here very quickly. We're going to recap, of course, the Dell match play. And with all that said, thank you for stopping by. Give me about 30 to 45 minutes to get through all this information for you. And let's go talk a little golf. Okay, so I do have a giveaway. Every year I do this, typically for the majors, then one for the players. And what am I giving away? I'm actually going to be giving away five random lucky winners, $100 each. And all you need to do to get into this giveaway is like this video, share it with anybody else if you know somebody else. But the key thing is click that like button. And I need you to subscribe if you're not a subscriber, because you got to tell me in the YouTube comments below, who do you think is going to win the Masters? So real quick, sum that up. Giving away randomly 5 lucky winners, $100 each. I will ask you if you do win when I put it in the random generator. Give me your PayPal email address, and then I will ship over the money for you. And again, all you simply have to do, click that like button and subscribe if you're not a subscriber. So let's talk a little bit about the WGC Dell match play. Of course, I talk a lot about this. I've had a lot of success here, not as much from a DFS side this time around, because two of the guys that, if you've been with me for a while, you know that I'm a huge Burns fan, Bermuda Burns. I've won a lot of money using Burn from a showdown play. A lot of guys don't like to use him from a showdown play. I've never understood that. Yeah, at times he can miss, but most of the time the guy just makes birdies in bunches. And then, of course, Cam Young, who I was chasing for his first win forever. But if you guys were, watched the Dell Match preview show and everything on it, I was completely off both these guys. Burnsy, a lot of it had to do with his form. The driver was wayward. The irons were wayward. The putter was still holding as it typically did. So that was one bright. And then, of course, right at Valspar, he kind of showed up a little bit at waste management. But other than that, it was kind of hit or miss. And funny enough, I was listening to the PGA Tour channel this morning, and they were actually talking to Travis, who's his caddy, and just kind of trying to understand what kind of flicked, what happened. And I guess, 2 points that I heard that was kind of interesting is, I guess Burns is a huge hunter. So like when the fall comes, golf kind of goes to the side. He worries about hunting. And then he kind of picked it back up at I believe at the Tournament of Champions, where he won at the Charles Schwab, beat Scheffler in that playoff, which is kind of funny, got him again. And of course, if you didn't hear, him and Scheffler are best of buddies. I tweeted that out, those pictures. I thought it was kind of funny. So then he brought in a new driver. I guess the driver broke, I think, at Kapalua. And they thought they had another one that would, work just as well. But long story short, it did not. So then he was struggling with his driver. That crept into his iron play. And then I guess that was the issue. You probably also heard, if you watch a bit of golf, that he was kind of, working on his takeaway, trying to, see where his club is, that position at 3 o'clock position. But neither here or there, as we saw, his game came back, and also it was his first time ever playing in the Dell Match play. Now, he did pretty well in the President's Cup, but, hasn't had a ton, at least, if you don't go back to amateur in college, of match play. So that kind of stung. I did jump on Burns. I bet him, I think, on Saturday live at like 11-1 and bet it pretty hard, because when I saw what was going on, I knew that this could definitely be something that could happen. So it was, like I said, kind of bittersweet. I didn't get on him early from a DFS side at all. I put in 20 lineups into the actual 200K, whatever, and was looking good going into the 16. I think I had 50% of my guys came out of pool. I had the Putnams, JJ Spawn, I had Day. I think the one that I missed was Mackenzie Hughes, which I try to remember. I think he had to come out of Cantley's group, if I remember right, and I was kind of, oh no, that was Power. It doesn't matter. Awesome that Burnsy won. I did hit a little bit of that. Oh yeah. And then I didn't put this in, but of course, I'm sure you saw the Corrales Punta Cana. I get all those vacation swing ones mixed up. That Matty Wallace also won. And I jumped on that early Sunday, where he was at 10-1. And I just, again, I was betting Matty Wallace and some other things. And funny enough, I didn't end up doing a Corrales Punta Cana show, because you just can't do any stroke gain data there. And I just thought there wasn't really anything that I had to offer that was, I think, super, great analysis. So I put a few bets in very early on, but literally missed completely that Matty Wallace was any playing in that. So hitting Burns and Wallace kind of really just saved the bankroll, because other than that, it was looking pretty dire. And then if you want to know, I mean, here was his road. Of course, he came out of this group. I think Seamus Power was who I actually picked. I think Adam Scott kind of took him to task, and then I think he drove it out of bounds, and that was the end of that. Of course, he beat Patrick Kelly, so he was my 1B, which I ended up kind of playing more of him the more I thought about it. And then again, losing to him, and then Hughes, he took care of, even though Hughes putted amazingly. And it looks like Mackenzie Hughes, from a match play perspective, will always be, if it ever comes back, which it should, some kind of form at some kind of course, he'll be always someone to keep an eye on. And then, of course, Scotty Scheffler, who had a 4-footer, I believe that was on 17 or 18. I'm not sure it was in a playoff. I forgot now, but he had a chance to put away Burns. He missed it, and then the next hole, Burns made the birdie, and away it was. So I guess it was in a playoff. And then, of course, once he got to Cameron Young, at that time, Cameron Young got up quickly on him a little bit. Been betting him on a lot of different, courses and tracks, and it just wasn't coming to fruition. And then out of nowhere, he started putting amazingly, and that was why I was off him, because no more than was I on Victor Hovland or Will Zalatoris, like really good ball strikers, but typically struggle a little bit with the putter. Like I said, two guys that ended up in the finish that I didn't have any of them in the DFS side. And of course, what was the key thing with Sam Burns? So we're not getting stroke gain data, but I did see some things from Data Golf. I think he was gaining like 6.25 strokes after like day 2, but you can see he made over 100 feet of putts, more than even Scotty Scheffler. Rory, it was kind of funny. If you watched a bit of Scotty Scheffler, he just kept getting down, giving away holes, and then just found a way to get back every time. And I think finally that just kind of caught up with him. And of course, and then they were talking to him after his defeat to Rory. I think of course NBC was really hoping that these guys would be in the final grouping for the championship. It did not happen. Funny enough, they both kind of ended up in the constellation. And kudos for both of them. Went almost 18 holes, and Scotty kind of mentioned he's never had to play for third place, and it was, well, I take that back. I guess he did in the Dell match play the first year he played in it, but he had a hard time kind of getting his mindset and getting in and spotted, as you see, quite a few holes to Rory. But neither here or there. I really didn't care who came out of this. Probably no more than you, because by the time I didn't have bets on these guys, and I did on Scotty. I take that back. I got him 14-1. But not on Rory. I was actually shocked. good for Rory. Of course, we all saw the drive on 18 against Denny McCarthy, who was another guy that I picked, and I think he was up 5 up on Keegan Bradley, and then end up tying the match. That blew me away. Kind of the same thing, Keegan Bradley. Like, I wasn't on the ball strikers who typically cannot putt. About all I wanted to share specifically on that. And then, of course, I guess the last thing was recent withdrawals, right? So we saw it. I tweeted this out. We had a lot of guys, right, that were, Tyrrell Hatton, which I think blew up a lot of people's hopes and dreams, because everybody thought he was coming out. I did too. I bet on him 40-1, even pre-tournament. And then, of course, you saw I tweeted out that he was on the range, hurt his wrist. I think it was it doesn't matter, it was right hand maybe. And it just seemed like that kind of affected him a little bit. We don't know. But of course, he's in the Valero Texas, he's the favorite going into the Valero Texas Open. But I'll be really curious if he pulls out. Actually, I will be not sad at all if Hideki and Tyrrell Hatton pull out of this thing, because Hideki, of course, I tweeted out, had the neck problems. They were taping him up. And then, of course, Will Z, they all pulled out because they're like, hey, I'm not going to do any more damage. I can't do anything here. So, of course, that helped Max Homa in one way, right? And that was another guy that got knocked out into 16 that I actually had going all the way. I just really felt that Max was going to shine in this thing. And I think he would have. I think it actually hurt him to not get to go out and play a competitive match the day before. Now, you could also say, well, it should have been an advantage because he got the rest. So anyways, I'm going to this because Hideki pulled out of this tournament last year. He's hurt. You got the Masters coming up. I think it was Adam Schenk already WD'd from this tournament. I think we're going to see a little more of this. That's my own personal opinion. It wouldn't shock me if Tyrrell Hatton pulls out. It wouldn't shock me if Hideki, which from a betting side, I think is awesome, because what that's going to do, right, if you got your bets in early on Monday, or if you're betting still, you're still getting that these guys are in the field and could, it's going to skew. If they drop out, the odds are going to lessen on a lot of the guys. Like if you're looking at Riley or Montgomery or whoever, probably get your bets in, whoever you're thinking. And I'm going to talk about who I like soon, because I think those guys will withdraw. And you can see this neck has been causing him quite a bit of issues. And then I throw this out there because, well, funny enough, we always worry about Hideki's putter, but he's actually gained the most strokes putting in Texas. So if you think of all the Texas events, Of course, the Valero, the Houston Open. You've got Colonial, which is the Charles Schwab, and you've also got the Byron Nelson. And he's actually gained almost a stroke when he's putting in Texas, which is typically Bermuda. There's some bent, but I just thought that was an interesting, of course, Okay, so with that said, I think that's a good segue to jump in and let's talk about the Valero Texas Open. Of course, the field was pretty rough. We're kind of almost back at that, the Honda Classic. It's even Jordan Spieth, which is amazing, a past champion here not too long ago, a couple of years ago, is not even here. But of course, everybody's gearing up for the Masters. Now, the only guys with bigger names that would be in this field is still guys that want that one win, like a Ricky Fowler, who needs to win to actually get into the Masters. But of course, we're in San Antonio, Texas. So staying within, of course, the match play was in Austin. And so I guess we're heading north if I think of my geography in Texas. The Valero Texas Open, right? It was the 100th year anniversary last year. It's been here, this event has been around forever. It's been actually hosted at TPC San Antonio, AT&T Oaks, which funny enough I don't have on here, but that's where it's at. TPC San Antonio, the AT&T Oaks course. It's been hosted here for the past 13 years, so got a ton of data on it. Funny enough, you got your buddies over at the Live Tour who actually designed it and also was the PGA consultant on the course. It's a par 72, just a little under, 7,430 yards, so it's a big boy course. But funny enough, it's not typically distance off the tee that shows here. We're going to dive into all that. We're Bermuda everything. Fairways rough is around 2.5 inches, 3 inches, probably by the weekend. And then, of course, they're overseeing it with this POA like we've been seeing because worrying about, of course, the weather. And if it's cold, they need to make sure they take care of that. We're back to a 144-player field, and it's T65 in ties. Historical cut line somewhere between +1 to +3. And then, of course, last year, your winner was J.J. Spawn at 13 under. I mentioned Jordan Spieth got, I believe this was his first win, kind of coming out of that funk since, what he did in 2015, 2016. You got Charlie the Hofster, who's, last year on my cover, it was him wearing that shirt that shows how much money he's made at this event. I mean, he's went back-to-back runner-ups, but of course his game has been pretty rough for a while, but typically he gets on this course and kind of falls in love, but not too far what we kind of saw with Kevin Kisner. Now, of course, he didn't make out of his pool play, but actually played pretty decent golf there at the Austin Country Club. Corey Connors, who's the last guy, I think, that actually Monday qualified for a tournament and then just smoked the field at 20 under. And then you had Andrew Landry, which I believe, I'm not sure if this is the year where there was a very big skew on the AM, PM flight advantages, tee times, because there is wind. And if you look at Wind Finder right now and pull up San Antonio, I think it's an airport, you're going to see, and it looked like a huge advantage yesterday to go with morning on Thursday and afternoon on Friday. But it seems like it still looks good to be morning Thursday, but the afternoon Friday don't look as bad. So we're going to have to keep an eye on that. Green size are, kind of average, a little over average, 6,400 square feet. You got this kind of like, you can see this brown sand, which is typically harder to get out of than that kind of very fine white sand. So, guys have to be good in sand. Just a little bit of water, nothing like we were used to seeing in Florida. So you got 3 holes where water comes into play, and then you got about Stimpmeter 11, which is actually, I got fast here, but on a PGA standard, I would call that average to slow. Course defense, there is a bit of trees out here. Very large fairways, so a lot of area to miss it. But if you go a little off that fairway, it's really thin rough line, and then you're right into the trees and rocks and cactuses and all that kind of fun stuff. It typically, as I mentioned, it is going to be windy here. It's just shows up every year. You got elevated greens with some, very shaven runoff. So if you think of Augusta where, you hit the green and then, it runs off and away it goes. That does happen here. Some past notes, 5 of the last 11 winners got their first PGA Tour victory here, J.J. Spawn being one of those. It is the second hardest. Now, this is coming from, I think, like 2022. Second hardest course on the tour to hit greens in regulation. I think a bit of that is the distance on some of these holes. You got some, very gettable par 5s, but then you also have some, big, long 600+ yard par 5s. You've got some, very long par 3s, some tough par 4s. But yeah, it actually behind Riviera was the second hardest to hit. And then I think Harbortown was next. I mentioned the large fairways, but watch out if you get off them because you can get into the stuff pretty quick. I mentioned the flight advantages. And then just side note, Trey Mullinax, back in 2018. That was the year when, like I said, it really showed a flight advantage from the guys that went off morning compared to afternoon. Set a course record of 62. Or I believe he tied a course record of 62. So, side note, nothing too crazy to point out. I mean, here's the water on 16, but that doesn't even come in on that par 3. I think something unique like Riviera on this, they have a bunker that they can put the flag right behind in the middle of the green. So that's kind of unique. Again, you really just can get an understanding of the trees. So scrambling definitely comes into play here around the green because, as I mentioned, it's hard to hit these greens. At least that's what it showed us in the past. So you got to be really good around the green, short game scrambling, hints, like a Jordan Spieth. It kind of shows up there. Yeah, I mean, the water typically come on the par 3s. I don't see where they really would come an issue. And then same thing here, like that water is not coming into play. So really it's all about trees. And what I kind of noticed, and we'll get into this in the past winters, is you just need guys that hit the fairway, distance. It can be an advantage if you're, driving it long and hitting it in the fairway all the time. But you kind of, it's more, I think, more of the kind of plotter, strategic, really good iron play guys that do well at this course. And to give you a bit, you got some slope and elevation, ton of sand there. And then you're going to hear a million times about how this hotel here is amazing and the water park and, the families love to come here and all of that. I do remember this. So I think this is 18. This is probably one of the holes that can get a bit tricky, but you can kind of see the fairway. And then if you get off, you're in a bit of a mess. But this is that little whatever creek that runs through here that guys can get in trouble. That does show up and is predominant. So you got to drive it out here and come in. Pretty rare, I think, that guys will try to come across. All right, so we look at the scorecard. I did check all the yardages. We're point on, nothing there. So I do have the recent scorecard. I didn't really see an advantage from a showdown perspective of taking guys. I try to look, maybe taking the guys off 10, because you got these two easier holes on the back. But then, number 1 is one of the tougher holes. But then you get to an easy par 5. Trying to see if you need more par 5s. So, yeah, you get 1, 2. But yeah, like I said, this could break up that consecutive birdie streak. Again, some of these, the hardest is number 4, 480 par 4, which I'll show you on my kind of custom stat model why I like the 75 to 100 pitching wedge guys. Do tend to show up here. Like I said, you've got some really long par 4s. You got some long par 3s. So, there's some gettable holes out here as usual. There's 6 holes to take advantage of, 6 holes to watch out that, you could have some issues with. And I already mentioned I ran all the yardage to spot on, and so is the total yardage and par 72. All right, so for my custom stat model that I'll be sharing with you, I've got quite a few different ways we're going to look at this model. But number 1, approach, it shows up over and over, and we'll verify that. I'll show you what past winners have done, or at least the top 10 guys. Ball striking, I think, is still key on this course. The field's kind of weak, so we have some good ball strikers, but nothing like, what we've been seeing. I mentioned around the green is sand save, scrambling, putting. It's not that putting is not, something that we always need, but it's really hard to predict who's going to do well. And we've seen guys who, can be very hot or cold with the putter. But, Matty Kuchar, I consider a pretty good putter. He's done very well here. Of course, J.J. Spawn, who part of the reason why, and he kind of blitzkrieged his way out of the pool for the Dell match play was just putting amazing. Typically does show up on Bermuda putting. You got proximity 75 to 100, par 3s. I'm looking at these long ones, see how guys do on that. You got these long 2 par 5s. I want to see how guys do on that. And then birdie or better opportunities. So this model has been slimmed down. As I kind of told you, I keep kind of honing these models. And after I see how the results of the other models work out. And then to kind of verify that, I always look at the past. So this past 3 years, we're going to look at what the guys have done well. Now, Jordan Spieth, of course, he has gained more distance off the tee, but he's, even now, he's not considered one of the longer players. He can hit the ball out there more than he could, in his earlier days. So, like I said, I think off the tee, you can see is not imperative that you gain crazy strokes. But you want to do well. Where it does show up is on the iron. So gaining 7.5, 6, 9.3, 7.1. Corey Connors almost gained 12 strokes off on approach. Hoffman 6, 6, 6. And then around the green, it's kind of the two things that at least show up. Now you could say here, but, Connors did it so much of the irons, he'd have to worry about it. Of course, the putter, you can see Matty Wallace, which, funny enough, I did end up throwing a bet on. I didn't bet him really. It's 40 to 1. And, his best showing in a PGA event before just winning Corrales was here. So I was kind of bummed that he won. I think we would have got better odds if he wasn't coming off a win at Puerto Rico. Well, I'm almost 100% sure of that. Um, then, of course, there's Charlie Hoffman. I mentioned his two recent. But if you kind of look at these guys, and you'll see, Chris Kirk just kind of fits that JJ Spawn kind of plotter. But then you got Gary Woodland, great ball striker, very long off the tee. Lucas Glover, a really good ball striker, not super long, but hits a lot of greens, really good with the irons. And the putter is typically what hurts him. So, yeah, if he gains like just a stroke with the putter, Lucas Glover can be very live, at least for a top 5, top 10. And Ryan Moore, Brian Stewart, who's actually a local. I do have the Texans who have local ties. I'll break those guys down for you too. And then we take a look at, last year you had JJ Spawn, which, was kind of a surprise. But he fits the mold. Kuchar, Australians do well typically here. Hence Cam Davis, I believe, is at 50-1. Someone that might be interested. I mean, he's showed a little bit of life recently, really struggled starting the year out. But, because of the win, so Texans and Australians. Troy Merritt is a little interesting to me. I had was kind of the player. Bo Hosler, Texas ties. I believe played at University of Texas. Typically shows up here. We'll go in all the Texas guys. But then Brennan Todd also kind of, getting a top 10. Again, fits that kind of plotter, hit fairways, get close, get on, and be a good putter on Bermuda, and that's is Brendan Todd. All right, so with all that said, of course, I told you I created that custom stat model we were talking about, and the first thing that I always look at is recent form. There's people that I kind of like merge them together. I think recent form is key, plus course history. That's what we'll see next. And what we're looking at here is the past 24 rounds or 6 tournaments, depending on what these guys have done, if they made cuts or not, but 24 rounds of golf. And I mentioned approach is my number one, heaviest weighted at 25%, ball striking at 15, around the green at 10, good drives at 15. If you don't know what that means, it doesn't take distance. If you hit the fairway or the first intermediate cut, that's a good drive. And then putting, again, I don't have it at that high again because we've seen guys that are not the best putters win here, but you're going to need to putt. So 5% sand saves. That proximity is 75 to 100. So I can do, there's analysis through Fantasy National that show you, does a certain range of proximity come in higher than typical PGA courses? The only one that shows up is the 75 to 100. And it's not ridiculous. I think about 10% of the shots coming in after your tee shot or the approach is the 75 to 100. But it makes sense to me. I know what JJ Spawn does well, and he is very good, like a Justin Thomas. Would do very well at this course, should. Also, even Jordan Spieth at this 75 to 100. I wanted to see these par threes because it's kind of unique to have a couple of these very long par threes. I think one of them is like 230, 240. And then these long par fives, you got 2 very gettable and 2 that you still want to make a birdie on. Scrambling, and then, of course, birdie or better. When I actually do my picks, I'll do the birdies, how they've been doing over that. But right now, I'm just looking at the opportunities these guys are producing. And with that said, right out the bat, number 1, Chris Kirk. Of course, we were talking about the Honda, won in that field, and he's showing up again as number 1 in recent form. Benny Martin, kind of crazy, but had a good showing at the Corrales, and it's had some top 10s. I've kind of talked about this guy when he was at a cheaper price tag, kind of trending. Of course, Ricky Fowler, everybody's, kind of hoping that Ricky wins this, getting the Masters. I think from a PGA perspective, from NBC, everybody's going to be hoping on Ricky. You got Siwoo Kim, who's done well here, Terrell Hatton, which will be interested to see if he WDs, and Hideki are the next. So I kind of said that wouldn't shock me if these 2 guys pull out. You got Nick Taylor, Joseph Brown, Eric Cole, who came, of course, runner-up in the playoff with Chris Kirk at the Honda. Brendan Todd, I told you, has done pretty well here. You got Garrick Higo, won at Palmetto, has won on island courses where it's windy. I like him I think you can still get him around 90 or 100 to 1 most places. His putter, which he's actually, I think, a pretty good putter, is what's been kind of hurting him, but has been ball striking well. You got David Lingermuth, who's also been kind of like a Ben Martin, kind of resurrected his career. Scott Pierce, he does show up in Texas. Nate Lashley. And then I brought in Matty Wallace. Well, he did make 50. There's one of them I brought him in just to show you from a recent form. You can see he's doing a lot of good things. Sometimes the driver can get a bit wayward, But other than that, he's been playing pretty good golf. Of course, with his win at Corrales that I mentioned. All right, so now we looked at recent form. Let's take a look at history. And I actually brought up a couple different ways. I want to look at it recent form history and then take a larger sample size. So we're going to see both of those again against my model. You got Matt Kuchar, which 28-1. That's kind of hard for me to bet, but it makes sense. He does fit. I actually bet Lucas Glover top 10. I did not bet him outright, but he has showed up over and over to top 10 at this course. I believe it was, I'm just going off memory, like 15-1, something like that for a top 10, maybe 10-1. You got Brendan Todd, Charlie Hoffman, Ryan Moore, Chris Kirk, Siwoo Kim, Kevin Streelman, Kevin Chappell, past winner here. I believe that was 2018-ish. It's been a little while. Corey Connors, Chez Reavie, Ricky Bobby Shelton, Zach Blair, JJ Spawn, Party Marty Lair, and Patty Kazire. I brought him in extra because, as you guys know, he's my Brokeback Mountain. But this guy in Texas is where he's had his best finishes, most recently even, and he has shown a little bit of life again. So, yes, I am betting Patty Kazire. So, it's 100-1. Why not? All right, so let's look at the past 24 rounds. Now, some of these guys you're going to notice don't have that kind of history here. But, just kind of note the rounds and you get understanding. So, again, changes up a little bit. You got Ryan Moore, funny enough, number 1. Again, fits that plotter, hit fairways, hits greens, hopefully makes some putts. Kuchar, Laird, Glover, Kirk, Ryan Palmer, who, of course, is a Texan. His home course is at Colonial, where they played to Charles Schwab, which he's not done that well at, funny enough. But typically in Texas, he does show up now. Ryan Palmer's game has definitely fallen back over the last, couple of years, I'd say. But he kind of fits into that Glover, Griot kind of model. Like typically is a very good ball striker. It's if the putter somehow just, can stay even or gain a little, watch out. Charlie Hoffman, Streelman, Connors, Jimmy Walker, and Ricky Bobby Shelton, Chez Reavie, Patty Kazire, Kevin Chappell, and Russell Knox, who, no thank you. I mean, this would be, I was a little bit on Knox in some different areas early on in the year, and the guy's just been just terrible. All right, and then to get the other perspective of looking over the past 5 tournaments here, who has gained the most strokes total? So this would be off the tee, approach, around the green, putting. Corey Connors, number 1, which you can kind of see a T26, a first, a 14th, and a 35th. You got Siwoo, the Hofster with a back-to-back, but of course missed a cut last year. Kuchar, Laird, Streelman, Ryan Moore, Glover, Chappell, Walker, Kirk, Palmer, and Merritt. Of course, some of your past champions are popping in there. Just trying to see if anybody just from my eye. I guess Party Marty Laird, which he also won at Shriners, which is TPC Scottsdale. That's kind of interesting. I don't think that's a terrible. I mean, same thing. Pretty good ball striker. The putter typically is what haunts him. So I'm just looking at consistency over the past 5 years. He looks and has played the last 5 years here. All right, so we're looking for guys that first off, put them in the fairway, which is the good drives. Aaron Rye, which if you've been with me for a while, this guy, TPC Sawgrass, I think is where he actually showed up and did pretty well at the Players. Because again, looking for guys that hit. I believe that was Aaron Rye who I was on. Got Hayden Buckley, Neesmith. For some reason, I have not bet him, but something keeps telling me that I should throw a bet on Neesmith. He actually withdrew. What was the last tournament before the Dell match play? It doesn't matter. But he withdrew, and he actually Valspar, where he had a good shot. So I don't know why he withdrew. But side note, something to keep an eye on. Ryan Moore, Will Gordon, been kind of waiting, for that win. Benny Martin, Tyler Duncan had a really nice showing. Been playing good golf, good showing at Corrales. I always kind of like to play Tyler Duncan, depending on his tee time, as a first-round leader. That guy literally go out, shoot 8, 9 under, and then go out and shoot 8 or 9 over the next day. Got Hatton, Lashley, Griot, Smalley, Corey Connors, James Hahn. Kind of fits in that bucket with the Griots and the Glovers and the Ryan Palmers. Really good ball striker, horrific putter. Siwoo Kim and then Matty Kuchar here rounding out the bottom for guys that are hitting the fairway. All right, so we look at the proximity to pin. First thing I just look at is approach. Who is leading over the past 24 rounds, 6 tournaments on approach? Again, iron play is always typically the number one thing from a stroking that you have to do well. So you got Fowler, Hatton, Cole, Knox, Piercy, Martin, Wallace, Kevin Roy, It's Corn Ferry guy. Straka, which I think another guy that I didn't pick Straka for the Dell Match play, but because of his price tag and what he's done on Pete Dye courses and the whole thing, I mean, he was just terrible. Ryan Palmer, Chris Kirk, Ryan Gerard, who did not play too well at Corrales, if I remember correctly, right? He popped up on our radar. I believe he was either he was a Monday qualifier or an sponsor invite for the Honda, and I know ended up I don't know, third or fourth, something like that. Got my buddy Ricky Bobby down here, Lingermuth, and then Han. Again, really good with the irons. And then if you're just curious who does that proximity 75 to 100, which I think is crucial for this course, funny enough, Palmer pops up number one, Bramlett, Martin, Mateus Schwab, who has shown up here before, top 10. You got Trevor Werbelow, Knox, Kirk, Duncan, Cook, Wallace, Spawn, Merritt, Paul Haley, Chesson Hadley, who I believe, I think he missed a cut at Corrales. So I don't think he did that well there. And Trell Hatton, rounding out the guys that have been really deadly from that 75 to 100 end. All right, I mentioned there was going to be wind. Typically is wind in Texas, as we all know. But it does definitely seem like there's an advantage. So I was just, I always do this when I go to a course that typically we have to deal with wind and just see the guys that have been handling the wind under my model here. And this is looking at the past 12 rounds. Now, you got to understand that this is under windy as fuck conditions. So that's crazy windy, right? Like 20 to 30 gusting. And so there's not a ton of that happens. Within a year, you probably get, I don't know, we'll say 20 rounds within a PGA Tour season. So I don't want it to go too far back is where I'm going with. But long story short, Adam Long, which, if you've been with me for a little bit, you know that I like him on vacation swing courses, which typically the wind blows. He shows up number one. You got Connors, Mullinex, Robert Streb. It's been a while since we've seen Streb do really anything. Novak, Taylor. Nick Taylor-Wright had his second place at the Waste Management, which I try to remember if there was a wind there or not, but you could see where it could get windy there. Hideki Masters, my Ryan Armour and Ryan Moore plotter guys. Kyla Westmoreland. Piercy, Sir William Wallace, Peter Molinati, Chad Raby, who awesomely WD'd from Corrales, and I have no clue why. He was playing okay. Of course, he was a past champion there, and I actually had a bet on him like 50 to 1, so that just burned that bet. Thank you, Chad Ramey. And then Kevin Streelman. So there are your guys who play well in the wind, or at least historically have over the past season. And then I did mention, I always typically do this, if we go to like a Florida course that I know there's guys that, typically do play well or from that area. And these are all the guys who either played college or live in Texas today that, it does seem like they will show up when they, get to their home games. Michael Kim, who I believe just lives there. I don't think he played college there. Of course, Ryan Palmer, he's a well-known Texan. Hence, again, George Spieth not being here, home game. But I guess, played the Dell Match play and said, well, there, I played in Austin, so there you go. Kramer Hickok, who's actually been playing pretty good golf. And of course, you're going to see these guys against my model who ranks up the best was Michael Kim over the last 24 rounds. You got Cole Hammer, who played at University of Texas. I also got Pearson Cooney here. You got Fratelli, who lives in Austin, Texas, and has done okay here. I would look at him as kind of more distance off tee. His only one that I remember is the John Deere, where he just went Infoego with the irons. You got Bo Hosler, as I mentioned, another University of Texas guy who typically does show up here and Pebble Beach for some odd reason. You got Brian Stewart, who I mentioned, he grew up in Michigan, went to Central, but does live in the Texas area now. Doug Gim played a little bit at University of Texas. Jimmy Walker is a Texan. You got Harry Higgs, who he lives there now in Texas. I think he's like New Jersey or Philadelphia or something odd where he grew up. Brian Gay, oddly enough, and then Andrew Landy, one of your past champions, also lives in Texas. So just, if you are curious, there is times where, you look at the leaderboard and all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, why are all these guys at the top, or at least top 20, a lot of them are Texas guys? It just does seem to happen. So if you want to put some kind of lineups together with just Texas players for DFS, why not? There you go. All right, so on that note, looking at comparable courses, this one, kind of been all over the map. because like I said, I just, there's not plotter strategic guys from what we've been seeing with history. Yeah, if you give me a Corey Connors who hits it 290 into fairway every time, sticks his iron shot, and can make some 3-footers, then yeah, I'll be all over that. But we don't have a lot of him. But again, I mean, I think there's no reason. Corey played really well at the match play event and has been playing good golf. And of course, this is his only win on tours here. But with that said, of course, I'm pulling in the data from TPC San Antonio. The one that's actually not in Texas, I do like Sanderson Farms. I think you get the same kind of players, or kind of status of guys that play there. Also, it's about the same yardage as Bermuda, and it's tree line, so I like that one. And then, of course, the Houston Open, which is, I believe, now Memorial Park for the last couple of years. Before that was at the Houston Country Club at Houston. That is actually where Lanto Griffin's got his one win. I just point that out because I saw him in the field. But he's been dealing with, I don't know what, definitely an injury. I just can't remember his back or wrist. You got the Colonial, and then you got TPC Craig Ranch. So these are all Texas courses. And I just went with that. Just, guys that typically do play well in Texas, to do well in Texas. So I wanted to see who those guys were. Funny enough, I mentioned Hideki, who gains the most strokes putting over since 2018. But again, I'm terrified of him. I'm just hoping he just pulls out, because I'm just not going to play him. I'll just tell you right now, I'm not playing him from a DFS side. I'm not betting him. I'm not playing him in Showdown. He'll probably end up and win everything and just blow it away if he does play. But I'm terrified with him. You got Kuchar, Glover, Davis Riley. We're going to talk about something in a second about what he did on the Korn Ferry Tour. But I think he's a lot of people's favorite. I think he opened up at 40-1. Now he's down to 24, 25-1. Corey Connors, Hoffman, Griot, Seabez, who, funny enough, you kind of saw at the Dell match play, and I keep talking about it just because, like I said, I'm still probably a little shocked with the whole thing. But I've said Seabez's game should fit there, just like we saw with Andrew Putnam getting out of his pool. Even J.J. Spawn, Mackenzie Hughes, the guys that are around the green putting specialists, but aren't the greatest ball strikers. But Seabez, again, just got smoked. So for whatever reason, still, he does not do well in match play. You got Benny Griffin, Ricky Fowler, Stuart Sink, Russell Knox, Francesco Molinari. I had no clue he was even in the field, but it makes sense. I'm just trying to remember. I think he lives in California, though, is where he moved to when he moved out of Europe. Chris Kirk and then Nick Harding are your guys that are showing up on these courses. And you got to take a look. I did pull 36 rounds as a sample. Okay, so let's get to the betting card. With all that said, I know it's a crazy betting card, but a lot of these are also top 10s. With these elevated events, I feel like hitting, as I've talked about quite a bit, hitting a long shot is getting harder and harder. And so when we have these really soft fields, we don't have a clear top 10 guys that are just the ultimate better golfers. I'm going to put more bets out there. Also, like I said, I ended up, kind of breaking even. So why not lose it all at the Valero? So anyways, I put a bet on Garrett Cago. Again, I think I got him at 100-1. Akshay Bhatia, of course, I've been, betting this guy, especially in the alternate events. He's come close. At Puerto Rico, had a pretty good showing at Corrales. So he's still at 100-1. Kramer Hickok, I believe it was outright. I bet him again. Texas guy, been showing up, came close to winning the Travelers, got in that shootout with my buddy Harris English, ended up losing, but, played amazing. Lucas Glover, I know for sure is a top 10 bet, but if you want to bet him outright, it's 150-1. Patty Kazire, I bet him outright at 100-1. Emiliano Grillo, I bet him outright at 90-1. Trey Mullinax, funny, on some of these bets, I did not do any analysis. Literally, it was Monday morning, get up, look at the board, look at the guys that I thought had a chance with good odds. And of course, I didn't even know that. I didn't remember that Mullinax actually had a course record or tied the course record here. So you can kind of see there's some bombers, but then of course there's also the guys that kind of plot their way around. Ben Taylor, I like playing him in Showdown. The guy can score. Not too far off from Taylor Moore winning here recently at the Valspar. I think Ben Taylor could do something like that. Charlie Hoffman, of course, top 10 bet. Just, the Hoster here. Fratelli, 140-1. I just liked it because I know, again, he's a Texas guy. And if he does what he does with the irons, can make some putts, he definitely has the distance off the tee. Austin Eckroat, he's, I always look at him, I think because his name's Austin, but he's actually played at Oklahoma, where Ricky Fowler and those guys went, Oklahoma State. Troy Merritt's has some good showings here, been playing pretty decent. Pearson Cootie, we've been seeing a little bit more of still. I think he's still kind of back and forth from the Corn Ferry in here. I know he's got, what, 2 wins? I think he needs one more to get, immediate status like Medio Piera did. Doc Redman is purely a top 10, just a good ball striker. Well, he has his ups and downs, but, it's kind of showed up a little bit. Taylor Pendrith, I believe I got him at 50 to 1. Wait, I take that back. I got him at 70 to 1. And the only thing when I think of Taylor, of course, he's got distance. But what I remember when he showed up at the Rocket Mortgage, that 75 to 100, he was elite. So that kind of shows up in his game. Let's go see where's it at? Funny enough, it's not saying that now, but the guy at the Rocket Mortgage lit it up. He was just driving that and then, of course, was putting on those bent greens. Scott Harrington was just a crazy, I think I got him even a higher number than this at 650 to 1, but he's just been kind of showing up, and I believe it's a top 10. Stewie Sink at 225 to 1 is showing me some. Cameron Champ, spend a minute. So last year he was my pick, my long shot here. And if you don't know, Cameron Champ moved to the area here, I think like 4 or 5 years ago. This is his home course. There's only 2 guys that I know that were on the PGA Tour that this is their home course and they play a ton. And it's Cameron Champ and Abraham Answer. Abe Answer, of course, is on the Live Tour. Cameron Champ, I talked a lot about him. I hit him at the 3M Open. I've won my largest hit ever from a betting perspective was Cameron Champ. So if I ever see the opportunity to, keep that going, of course, also lose money back, but I have a pretty nice little bet if he somehow pulls that out and could win on his home course. Now, the guy has been bad, but if you know Cameron Champ's game, right, he's got distance. He hits that low kind of stinger drive, and he's usually pretty accurate with it. It's kind of everything after that, the around the green, the putting. His irons can go, actually where he struggles is that pitching wedge, that, striking at 100-yard, 120-yard. Like I told you guys, if you look at his past wins, he's had no form going in to win at Sanderson Farms. I believe the Safeway, I think, is what he won also. And then, of course, the 3M Open. Like, you would have no idea that Cameron Champ's going to win a tournament. And this guy, when he came out, he was like one of those elite talents. It's just, I think he's been dealing with wrist injuries. He's always got his wrist taped, so I'm not trying to make excuses for him, but long story short, he's 180 to 1. And I'm like, you know what? Why not? Dude, you're going on your home course. Now, I had this whole theory last year. If you look at his history here, I think he's had a 78th, like a 35th, and then he missed a cut last year. So, and then Max McGreevy, I got him at like the most ridiculous number. I think it was like 1,500 to 1. So that is, I think he's went down, but literally they were offering him at 1,500 to 1. And then also like top 10 was like ridiculous, like 400 or 500 to 1. So long story short, I bet him top 10, and I just, I put a few bucks on it. Like, he showed like hairs of life just recently. The guy has been really bad for the 2023 season, even into 2022, just like tons of miscuts, but he showed up a little bit at Corrales. So anyways, that's it. And I mentioned, I don't think it's on here, I did bet Matty Wallace 40 to 1. Now, you got that back-to-back thing, but he has done it on the DP World Tour when he's in form, has won back-to-back. So yeah, why not? Okay, and the last thing you're probably going to hear a little bit about, of course, the Corn Ferry Tour played here back in 2020, and Davis Riley won this tournament at 16 under. And, I have no problem with betting him. I think he came out 40 to 1. So if you got him there, I thought I did not. And now he's like 24 to 1 or something like that. So I don't have a bet on him. I'm probably not going to bet him at that number. Also, Taylor Pendrith, which I just mentioned, actually came in a T2 here. And then my buddy Austin Smotherman, who I believe is a Texan. He's not, I don't think he's in the field. I didn't see him. I didn't recognize him in the field. So, but I would be interested to play him here if he was, at least from a DFS. You got Will Z. Of course, he's a Texan, ended up T5th. Then there's Benny Martin down there. So just side note, he's been in good form. So I from a T10 kind of bet, I think that would be, I don't even know what he's at T10 or from a betting for a top 10 finish. But anyways, I wanted to show you this. You're going to hear a bit about it. Of course, Davis Riley won here. But again, it was a Corn Ferry Tour event, which, still, if you can see the field, pretty solid. So no issues. Of course, also had his chance to win the Valspar, which, you could put it as a comparable course and see how that goes. So anyways, guys, I just wanted to give you that little piece of information also. All right, well, that said, that's it. That's Siwoo Kim, of course, striking that ball. And again, If you guys like what I do, appreciate the information, do me a favor, click that like button, share it with anybody else for some odd reason that's interested in doing a little fantasy or betting on golf. And if you're not subscribed, I need you to subscribe to tell me who is going to win the Masters in the YouTube comments below. Please only enter once. So I'm going to be doing this during the Valero and then, of course, in the early stages. And then I will announce the winners on my pick show, probably Wednesday timeframe. And then last but not least, follow me on Twitter if you want to keep up with, hey, withdrawals or anything funny that I kind of see that's transpiring during the tournament. I typically do tweet out during the tournament. I'm kind of glad I waited until Tuesday to do the show because I was in a bit of a hangover Monday from the Dell Match play. Also, we got the Masters coming. Wasn't really super excited about the Valero, but then kind of the more I started thinking about it, hey, man, this is our chance to hit another, long shot. I think we had Kitayama at the Arnold Palmer, which I did not hit. Why not the Valero? Let's see if we can hit one of these 3-digit to 1 and see what happens. All right, guys. Talk to you tomorrow. I'll have the pick show out then, and have a great day.